Have you ever wondered why some people seem unaffected by the chaos of life? Why certain individuals maintain a calm center while others are tossed about by every emotional storm? Have you ever envied those who appear indifferent to rejection, criticism, or failure, not because they're cold or unfeeling, but because they possess something deeper, something that shields them from unnecessary suffering? Perhaps you've tried to become such a person yourself. You've attempted to control your reactions, to hide your disappointments, to present a face of stoic resolve to the world. And yet, inside, you still feel the sting of every slight, the weight of every expectation, the burning desire for recognition and validation that never seems fully satisfied. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most provocative philosophers of the 19th century, offers us a brutal yet liberating truth. The path to freedom from suffering does not lie in controlling the external world, but in detaching from our own endless wanting. True power is not found in getting what you desire, but in transcending desire itself. But let me tell you something that perhaps no one has had the courage to tell you before. As long as you remain enslaved to your desires, to your unquenchable wanting, you will never be free. As long as you define yourself by what you possess, achieve, or control, you will remain a hostage to forces beyond your reach. This is not pessimism. This is the reality that most people refuse to face. The difference is that some have learned to see through the illusion better than others. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident. This video is for you who are tired of being pulled in every direction by your wants and needs. It's for you who feel that you are always at the mercy of circumstances, of other people's opinions, of your own insatiable desires. I want to show you that there is another way. But for that, you'll need to face some uncomfortable truths that might initially sting. Yet this time, perhaps for the first time, this pain will set you free. Let's begin. You believe your suffering comes from not getting what you want, the promotion you deserved, the relationship you longed for, the recognition you worked so hard to achieve. You think your pain stems from the gap between what you desire and what you possess. But Schopenhauer reveals a more brutal truth. It is not the lack of fulfillment that causes your suffering. It is desire itself. All satisfaction, or what is commonly called happiness, is really and essentially always negative only and never positive, Schopenhauer wrote. What he meant was revolutionary. Satisfaction is merely the temporary removal of a desire, not a positive state in itself. The moment one desire is satisfied, either the same desire returns, like hunger, or a new one takes its place. We are like Sisyphus, eternally pushing our boulder of desire up the mountain, only to watch it roll back down again. The brief moment at the summit, that fleeting sensation of accomplishment, is just that, fleeting. And so we begin again, and again, and again. This is why more success, more wealth, more recognition will never be enough. It's why people who seem to have it all often feel as empty as those who have very little. The problem isn't what you have, it's that you're trapped in the cycle of wanting itself. And here comes an uncomfortable truth. You still suffer so much because you believe happiness can be attained through the fulfillment of desire. You're still striving to be successful enough, attractive enough, wealthy enough, respected enough, as if acquiring these things will finally quiet the voice of want inside you. But control over external circumstances is an illusion. As long as you cling to it, you live in constant tension, trying to bend reality to your will, trying to force the world to satisfy desires that, by their very nature, cannot be permanently satisfied. Do you want to stop suffering? Then stop chasing satisfaction through desire. What you need is not more control over your external circumstances, but control over your internal state. And that begins with understanding the tyranny of the will. As long as you believe that getting what you want is the path to happiness, you will remain enslaved by your own desires.
Your freedom begins the moment you understand that true power comes not from satisfying the will, but from quieting it. And this is exactly where the true battlefield lies, in the will itself, what Schopenhauer considered the very essence of human existence. What you do not understand about your own desires masters you, and this is what we will explore next. Get ready to dive one level deeper, because that is where true transformation begins.
The greatest deception you've been told is that you are in control of your wants and needs. Wake up, because you're not. At least not as long as you remain a slave to what Schopenhauer called the will. Unlike many philosophers before him, Schopenhauer didn't see human beings as primarily rational creatures. Instead, he recognized that beneath our thoughts and conscious decisions lies something more fundamental, a blind, insatiable striving that he called the will. This will is not just your personal desires. It is the very life force that flows through all things, a restless, eternal striving that uses you as its instrument. Your desires for success, love, recognition, security, these are not just your personal preferences. They are manifestations of this impersonal force working through you, using the illusion of individuality to perpetuate itself. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills, Schopenhauer declared. Think about that for a moment. You may choose how to pursue your desires, but you don't choose those desires themselves. They arise in you unbidden, shaped by forces beyond your conscious control. Biology, past experiences, social conditioning. The sudden rage that overtakes you when someone cuts you off in traffic, the envy that arises when a colleague gets the promotion you wanted, the anxiety that gnaws at you when facing uncertainty. None of these are random. They are the will asserting itself, demanding satisfaction regardless of the cost to your peace of mind. You wonder why certain events devastate you while others are indifferent to them. Because those events threaten something the will has attached itself to within you. If they are devastating, it is because you have identified yourself with the objects of your desire, with your social role, with your possessions and achievements. You have become a servant to the will rather than its master. Schopenhauer tells us, wealth is like seawater. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. And what have you been doing? Drinking more seawater, chasing more wealth, more status, more pleasure, as if quantity could eventually quench a thirst that is qualitative in nature. The truth is that the will does not subside just because you feed it. It only grows stronger, more demanding. It manifests in relationships where you need constant validation, in work where no achievement feels sufficient, in consumption that never satisfies. Do you want to be someone who is no longer at the mercy of this force? Then stop identifying with it. Stop believing that you are your desires, because as long as you remain unconscious of how the will operates within you, you will be a puppet to its demands, and the more you try to satisfy it, the stronger its grip becomes. But there is a way out, and it is not in serving the will, but in transcending it. Because becoming untouchable by life's vicissitudes is not an act of acquisition, but an act of renunciation. This is what we will explore next, what it truly means to detach, and why this detachment is not cold indifference, but the highest form of freedom. Let's continue. Most people believe the only way to achieve peace is by fulfilling their desires, getting the perfect job, the ideal partner, the beautiful home, the admiration of others. They chase and accumulate, convince and control, all in service to the will's demands. But inside, they remain turbulent, because one satisfied desire simply gives birth to 10 new ones. The goal posts always move. The horizon never comes closer. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom, wrote Schopenhauer. We oscillate between the suffering of unfulfilled desires and the emptiness that comes when those desires are temporarily quieted, only to be replaced by new ones or by a profound sense of what now. This is why so many people who achieve their dreams find themselves asking, is this all there is? It's why the celebrity, despite fame and fortune, may feel as empty as before. The objects of desire change, but the structure of desire itself remains intact. Schopenhauer offers a radical alternative: detachment. Not the cold detachment of someone who has given up on life, but the liberating detachment of one who has seen through the illusion that any object, achievement, or relationship can provide lasting satisfaction. To detach means to stop identifying yourself with your desires. It means to observe the wanting that arises within you without becoming it. It means to recognize that you are not your desires, but the awareness in which those desires appear. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, Schopenhauer noted. In solitude, away from the social pressures and comparisons that inflame desire, we can begin to distinguish between what we truly need and what the will compels us to want. We can start to see how much of our striving is not for our well-being, but for the satisfaction of an impersonal force working through us. Becoming emotionally resilient has nothing to do with getting better at fulfilling desires or with pretending not to have them. It has to do with transcending the tyranny of desire itself. You do not become untouchable by finally getting everything you want, an impossible task, but by wanting differently, by wanting less, by transforming the very structure of want itself. When you detach from identification with desire, criticism no longer devastates you because you no longer identify solely with your social self. Rejection no longer destroys you because you no longer need external validation to feel complete. Loss no longer crushes you because you recognize the impermanence of all things from the start. This doesn't mean you stop acting in the world or pursuing worthwhile goals. It means you act from a place of clarity rather than compulsion. You choose rather than being chosen by the unconscious forces of the will. Schopenhauer called this state the denial of the will to live, not a rejection of life itself, but a transcendence of the blind striving that usually constitutes life. It is a shift from living as a servant of desire to living as a witness to it. However, this path requires courage. Courage to look within. Courage to question your most basic assumptions about what will make you happy. Courage to let go of the very things you thought defined you. And that is what we will discover in the next part. How renunciation, far from being a withdrawal from life, can become the gateway to your true power. Let's dive deeper, and this time, without fear. You've been taught since childhood that getting what you want is the path to happiness. You've learned that accumulating more wealth, more experiences, more connections, more status, is the way to a fulfilling life. But the more you acquire, the more your wanting intensifies, and the more vulnerable you become to loss, to disappointment, to the inevitable changes that life brings. The most radical aspect of Schopenhauer's philosophy is his insistence that true freedom comes not through acquisition, but through renunciation. Not just the renunciation of physical possessions, though that can be part of it, but the renunciation of the very structure of wanting itself. The fewer desires we have, the more peacefully we live, he wrote. This is not a call to asceticism for its own sake. It is a recognition that every attachment becomes a potential source of suffering, every desire a possible avenue for disappointment. What would it mean to renounce not just particular desires, but the compulsive nature of desire itself? To observe the arising of want without being compelled to act on it. To feel the pull of ambition, of lust, of the need for recognition, and yet remain centered in a deeper awareness that is not defined by these temporary states. Ignored desires do not disappear. They simply go underground, emerging later in different, often more destructive forms. But desires that are fully seen, fully acknowledged, and yet not identified with, these begin to lose their compulsive power. They become objects of awareness rather than driving forces of behavior. Schopenhauer found in Eastern philosophies, particularly Buddhism and Hinduism, confirmation of what he had intuited through his own reasoning: that suffering comes from attachment and liberation comes from letting go. He saw in the concept of nirvana not a nihilistic void, but a transcendence of the endless cycle of desire and temporary fulfillment. This renunciation is not a rejection of joy. In fact, Schopenhauer believed that once freed from the tyranny of the will, we can experience a more authentic kind of happiness. Not the fleeting pleasure that comes from satisfying a desire, but the deep contentment that comes from being at peace with what is. Art, for Schopenhauer, offered a temporary respite from the demands of the will. In contemplating a beautiful painting, in losing ourselves in music, in being absorbed by great literature, we momentarily step outside the endless cycle of wanting and briefly taste what it would be like to be free of desire's grip. These aesthetic experiences give us a glimpse of what a more permanent liberation might feel like. But this liberation comes at a price. You must be willing to let go of the very things you thought defined you. Your ambitions, your social identity, your need to be seen in certain ways by others. All these must be recognized as manifestations of the will rather than your authentic self. And this brings us to the final point of this journey: consciousness as the ultimate shield. Because it is not through getting what you want that you become free, but through becoming aware of the wanting itself. Let's finish this crossing together. We're almost there. Now that you've come this far, there is something that needs to be said very clearly. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will shield you from suffering if you remain identified with your desires. The disappointments will continue to crush you. The criticisms will continue to wound you. The losses will continue to devastate you until you awaken. And awakening is not a single event. It is a continuous process. It is the ongoing practice of observing your wants and needs without becoming them. It is taking responsibility for your reactions without blaming external circumstances for your inner state. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free." In solitude, in the quiet space of self-reflection, we can begin to distinguish between what we are and what we have merely identified with. You have spent your whole life running after desires, believing that their fulfillment would bring lasting happiness. You have defined yourself by your accomplishments, your relationships, your possessions. You have lived on the surface of life, tossed about by every wave of wanting that passed through you. But now you know. True emotional immunity is not found in getting better at fulfilling desires. It is found in the transcendence of desire itself. It is not about creating armor against the world. It is about expanding your awareness to include both desire and its opposite, both pleasure and pain, both gain and loss. When you understand the nature of desire, when you see how it arises and passes away, when you recognize it as a temporary state rather than your essential nature, the events of life lose their power to destroy your peace of mind. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still experience loss, but you don't lose yourself. And that changes everything. What shields you is not protection from life, but engagement with it at a deeper level. Those who live on the surface, identified with their wants and needs, are hurt by every wave of circumstance. Those who dive deeper know that there is stability, clarity, and power beneath the turbulent surface. Schopenhauer's philosophy is often considered pessimistic, but there is profound optimism in his recognition that we can transcend the very source of our suffering, not by changing the world to match our desires, an impossible task, but by changing our relationship to desire itself. If this video has touched something within you, if something in Schopenhauer's brutal truth resonates with your own experience, write in the comments, "I choose awareness." Let's start a movement of people who no longer want to be slaves to their desires, but who seek to live with clarity and freedom. And don't forget that the next video is also part of this journey. Real transformation only begins when you don't stop at the first step. True power comes not from controlling the world, but from transcending the need to control it. The untouchable human is not the one who gets everything they want, but the one who is seen through wanting itself. See you there.